Alright guys, in this video we are basically going to look at a little trick when multiplying fractions, how we can make it so that we work with numbers that are much smaller than just multiplying across. So for example, if we had a fraction like 3, let's do 40ths, and we wanted to multiply it by 5/9. We could just multiply across and end up with 15 over 360. And then we would have to figure out, okay, I know they can both be divided by 5, and you would have to kind of start working your way down. Essentially, what's really happening in a problem like this is we can kind of just do this. And I could continue to almost break these down a little bit further. So this would still be the same thing if I did right, because 5 times 8 is 40, and 3 times 3 is 9. So essentially, this is the same as this, is the same as this. And any time that I have a number, for example here, remember this is a fraction bar, so it means division. So essentially, I could be doing this 3 divided by 3. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I can actually cancel those guys out. So I could get rid of them because they cancel each other out. And this 5 and this 5, 5 divided by 5 is also 1. So I can cancel those guys out. And that leaves me, since they're just really ones, that leaves me with a 1 up top. And 8 times 3 is 24. So if we were to take 360 divided by 15, we would get 24. So I essentially could simplify both the top and the bottom by 15. Now, I know that looks super confusing, and we're going to do a few more like that, and then I'm going to show you the shortcut. This video is not a requirement. This is not something you have to do in order to multiply fractions. It's just something that might help you. But in order to teach you the trick, I have to make sure that you understand the reasoning why we can do it. So let's look at another fraction. Let's look at 4 over 20. And let's multiply it by 2 over 10. So we could multiply across, and we would get 8 over 20 times 10 is 200. And you might be able to look at that right away and say, okay, I know I can divide by this. But we can also, again, we're going to break it down and show you that 4 times 2 over 20 times 10. And I'm going to rewrite the top part, so that would be 2 times 2 times 2. And those of you in the morning class know that that is, when I break that down, that's kind of like that prime factorization of 8. And then 20 times 10, I'm going to do 5 times 2 times 2. That's my 20 times 2 times 5. So this part is my 10, this part is my 20, this part is my 4, and then my 2. And just like we did above, I can cancel out my 2's here, because 2 divided by 2 is 1. And this 2 divided by this 2 is 1. And this 2 divided by this 2 is 1. And so on the top, I'm left with 1. And on the bottom, I'm left with 25. And if we go back to this, I know if I divide by 8 over 8, I get 1, and 200 divided by 8 is 25. And you can think of that as 4 25s in 100, so in 200 there must be 8. Okay, so the way that we can make this quicker, because you really won't write all this out, it doesn't seem to make it quicker, that's just why it works. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to teach you the trick, or what we can do when we have fractions that might be a little bit larger than we would like. So what if we were multiplying these guys? Instead of doing 25 times 18, because I'm not sure I could do that in my head, I'd have to do some thinking there. I want to go ahead and simplify first. So when we did the problems before, notice we talked about I could cancel things out that were in the top and the bottom. So in this case, I know that there is going to be a 5 in the top and a 5 in the bottom. So I can cancel out, and both of them have a factor of 5. So I can cancel that out. 5 divided by 5 leaves me with a 1, and 25 divided by 5 leaves me with a 5. So now my problem is 3/5 times 1/18. But I can also simplify, notice, and it has to be 1 in the top, 1 in the bottom. So I see that 3 and 18 share a factor of 3. So I'm going to divide both of them by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. There aren't any more factors that are shared in the top and the bottom, especially because I have just ones at the top. So now I can multiply across, and I'm going to have 1, and then 5 times 6 is 30. I'm going to show you that with a smaller number, why that works, because we could then see the simplifying easier. So if we were to do 3/4 times 1/9, and I multiply across, this is pretty easy, but we would get 3/36. And hopefully you would see that you can divide both the top and the bottom by 3. And you would get 1/12. So that's my answer. If I do this same problem and I simplify first, remember I'm looking for factors that would be shared in the top and the bottom. So these guys share a 3 as a factor. They can both be divided by 3. And I have 1 in the top, 1 in the bottom. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. So now when I multiply across, I get 1/12. It's the same answer. Again, this was nice and easy, and you may have just been able to look at that quickly. But as the numbers get bigger, it does make sense to simplify first, or it makes it a little bit easier to simplify first. So let's look at just a couple more, and you can get the whiteboard and practice with me as you go along. You can hit pause, check your work. So let's do 16ths. And let's multiply it by 4/18. So you may have to go off to the side and do 16 times 18 if you just multiply across. So this makes a great problem where you can simplify first. And again, I'm looking for factors that would be in both the top and the bottom. And since, 4 can be written as 4 times 1 or 2 times 2, and 16 can be written as 4 times 4, I know that they both share a factor of 4, so I can divide both 4 and 16 by 4. So I'm going to do that to get 1, and that guy becomes 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, 16 divided by 4 is 4. And then this way, 3 and 18 both share a factor of 3. So I can divide 3 divided by 3 to get 1, and 18 divided by 3 to get 6. So then I can just multiply across, and I get 1 over 24. This to me is easier because I didn't have to multiply 16 times 18 and then find a way to simplify. I could simplify first with easy numbers that I already understood and have that fact fluency for. Even if you have 3 numbers, so let's say we have 2/3 times 4/7 times 6/12. We can still do the same thing as long as it's the top and the bottom, and you can only do it once. So even though 4, 2, and 6 can all go into 12, I'm just going to choose one of those and make it my largest one. You can do any, but I'm going to make it the largest one so I can do it in fewer steps. So 6 and 12, or I could do, actually I could do it here too. We'll just do it this way. And 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. And now I have a 1, a 4, and a 2. But I have a 2 down at the bottom here. So these guys, so I have a 2 in the top, a 2 in the bottom. So I can simplify there and get 1, and simplify there and get 1. And so now when I multiply across, I have 1 times 4 times 1, which gives me 4. And then I have 3 times 7 times 1, which gives me 21. So my answer is 4 over 21, which cannot be simplified. All right, let's just do a couple more. We'll do 5/16 times 4/15. And I'm going to look at which factors can be shared both in the top and the bottom. So 16 and 4 both share a factor of 4, giving me 1 and 4. And 5 and 15 both share a factor of 5, giving me 1 and 3. And as I multiply across, I get 1/12. That is much simpler than trying to multiply 16 times 15 and simplifying there, because I can simplify easy beforehand. If I do 4/9 and 3/20, my 3 and my 9 can be simplified. They both can be divisible by 3. And 4 and 20 can both be divisible by 4. And I end up with 1 over 15. Okay. All right. Remember that this is not a required step. It's just something to make it easier as you go along. If you would still like some small group help on this skill, then you can write it on our needs and wants board, and I will make sure that we have a group.